My brother accused me of trying to steal his wife during his wedding toast in front of everyone because I fixed her veil. I was adjusting Elena's veil when Marcus grabbed my wrist. His grip felt desperate, fingers digging into bone. The reception hall buzzed with 200 guests, all mid-conversation, champagne glasses catching the light from crystal chandeliers. Nobody noticed us yet. "What are you doing?" His voice came out strangled. "Your wife's veil is caught on her necklace clasp," I said, finishing the adjustment. "There. All fixed." Elena turned, smiling at me with genuine warmth. "Thank you, David. You're always so thoughtful." Marcus released my wrist but didn't step back. Something dark flickered across his face before he plastered on that politician's smile he'd perfected over the years. The one that never reached his eyes. 3 hours later, during his toast, he made sure everyone noticed. "I want to thank my best man," Marcus said, raising his glass. The microphone amplified every word across the reception hall. "My brother David, who's been so attentive to my bride today. So attentive that he couldn't keep his hands off her during the ceremony." The room went silent. 200 faces turned toward me. "I saw you," he continued, voice thick with manufactured emotion. "Touching her, whispering to her. Everyone saw it. My own brother, trying to move in on my wife on our wedding day." Elena's face drained of color. She reached for Marcus's arm, but he pulled away. My parents sat frozen at the head table. My father's jaw worked soundlessly. My mother's hand covered her mouth. I stood up slowly. "Marcus, that's not what happened. Don't," he cut me off. "Don't insult everyone's intelligence. We all have eyes. The thing about public humiliation is how it crystallizes. One moment you're a person with dignity, relationships, a place in the world. The next, you're a pariah." My cousin Jen left her table. Uncle Robert wouldn't meet my gaze. Marcus's college friends whispered behind their hands. I walked out. Didn't run, didn't shout. Just walked. 6 months before, I'd lent Marcus $43,000 to cover his gambling debts. He'd shown up at my apartment at 2 a.m, shaking, saying men had followed him home. Said he needed help. Said he'd pay me back within the year. I'd given him the money the next morning. My entire savings from 8 years of working construction management. Never asked him to sign anything. He was my brother. Now, sitting in my truck outside the reception hall, I understood what the money had really been about. Marcus hadn't been scared of loan sharks. He'd been terrified Elena would find out about his gambling before the wedding. He'd needed those debts cleared so he could present himself as stable, responsible, marriage material. And I'd helped him lie to her. My phone buzzed. Text from Mom, "How could you do this to your brother?" Then Dad, "Don't come to Sunday dinner until you apologize." My younger sister Claire, "I always knew you were jealous of him." The texts kept coming. Marcus's college roommate. My cousin Pete. People I'd known my whole life, all convinced I'd tried to seduce my brother's bride. Elena never texted. Neither did Marcus. I drove home to my apartment, that one-bedroom place in Riverside that I'd planned to use as a down payment on a house. Would have had enough by now if I hadn't given Marcus everything. Sat in the dark for 3 hours, watching headlights slide across the ceiling. Here's what I realized: Marcus had planned this. Maybe not consciously, but he'd been building toward it. The gambling, the loan, the wedding arrangements where I'd been positioned next to Elena all day as best man. He'd created the perfect stage for his performance. My brother had destroyed my reputation to deflect from his own failures. Used me as a shield so Elena would never question why he'd been so desperate, so secretive, so insistent on a quick engagement. I spent the next week getting fired via email. The construction company where I'd worked for 8 years had Marcus's father-in-law on the board. Apparently, moral character concerns meant immediate termination. My landlord called. Someone had submitted a complaint about me. Noise violations that never happened. She sounded apologetic but firm. I had 30 days. Marcus was thorough. I'd give him that. Sunday came. I didn't go to my parents' house, obviously. Instead, I drove past it around noon. Saw Marcus's BMW in the driveway. Saw Elena's white Honda. They were having family dinner without me. My empty chair probably felt like vindication to them. I drove to the public library instead. Spent 6 hours in the computer section, researching. Started with gambling addiction and debt consolidation. Moved on to marriage licenses and financial disclosure laws. Branched into Nevada Gaming Commission complaints and credit reporting. 3 weeks after the wedding, I'd built a comprehensive picture. Marcus's gambling wasn't new. He'd had credit card debt since college. Had borrowed from 6 different friends over the years, always with some excuse. Never paid anyone back fully. The $43,000 I'd given him was just the latest in a long line of bailouts. But Elena didn't know. Marcus had presented himself as financially stable. She'd paid for half the wedding herself, under the impression they were building a future together on equal footing. I made copies of everything. Bank transfers showing my loan to Marcus. Screenshots of his old social media posts about casino trips, back when he thought gambling made him look sophisticated. Text messages where he'd beg me not to tell anyone about the money, especially not Elena. Then I did nothing. Waited. Let September roll into October. Got a new job doing freelance project management. Found a cheaper apartment in a worse neighborhood. Watched my family's social media from a distance, seeing photos of Sunday dinners and birthday parties I wasn't invited to. Marcus posted constantly. His life looked perfect online. Beautiful wife, new house, successful career in medical device sales. Never mentioned that Elena's parents had fronted the down payment for the house. Never mentioned that his territory assignments kept getting worse because he missed quotas. In November, Elena called me. First time I'd heard her voice since the wedding. "David," she said. "I need to talk to you about something." We met at a coffee shop in neutral territory, halfway between my new apartment and their house. She looked tired. Beautiful still, but tired in a way that makeup couldn't hide. "Marcus has been acting strange," she started. "He's been secretive about money. Gets defensive when I ask about our accounts. Yesterday I found credit card statements he'd hidden. We're $30,000 in debt, and I don't know where it came from." I stirred my coffee. Waited. "I've been thinking about the wedding," she continued. "About what Marcus said. It never made sense. You were fixing my veil. I told him that after everyone left, but he insisted you'd been inappropriate. Why are you telling me this?" "Because I think he lied." Her voice cracked. "I think he lied to everyone, and I don't understand why. You gave up everything for him. Your savings, your reputation. Marcus told me you volunteered to help with wedding expenses, but when I asked to thank you personally, he said you wanted to keep it anonymous." The coffee shop hummed with afternoon conversations. A barista called out someone's order. Outside, leaves skittered across the parking lot. "He borrowed $43,000 from me," I said quietly. "Last March. Said it was an emergency. I gave him everything I had." Elena's face went completely still. "He told me his bonus from work covered his wedding expenses." I pulled out my phone, showed her the bank transfer. March 15th. $43,000. In the memo line I'd written, "For Marcus, pay back when you can." She stared at the screen for a long time. Then she started crying. Not dramatic sobbing, just quiet tears running down her face while she sat motionless. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I didn't defend you. I should have defended you. I knew it didn't make sense, but I was so overwhelmed with the wedding, and Marcus was so convincing. He's good at that. What else don't I know?" That's when I told her everything. The gambling. The pattern of debts. The fact that I'd been his safety net for years, always believing he'd change. Always thinking this time would be different. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she dried her face with a napkin. "I need to figure out what to do," she said. "This isn't just about money. He lied to me about who he is." "Whatever you decide," I said, "I won't use this to hurt him. That's not why I'm telling you." "I know." She managed a weak smile. "You're nothing like him. I see that now." We parted in the parking lot. She drove away toward the life she'd thought she had. I went back to my small apartment and the life I was rebuilding. But Elena was stronger than I'd given her credit for. Update 1. 3 weeks after our coffee shop meeting, Elena filed for separation. Not divorce yet, just separation. Legal paperwork establishing that their finances were no longer combined. She moved back in with her parents. Marcus called me 47 times that week. Left voicemails that progressed from angry to desperate to threatening. I didn't answer. Didn't block him either. Just let the messages accumulate, each one more evidence of who he really was. The nuclear option came from an unexpected direction. Elena's father, Richard, had connections in medical device sales. Within 2 weeks, Marcus's employment situation became precarious. Not fired, but suddenly every account he managed developed problems. Orders got delayed. Clients requested different representatives. His commission checks withered. I didn't ask Richard to do that. Elena told me later that her father had made that decision independently after learning how Marcus had treated me. Richard was old school. Believed in family loyalty, in protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. Believed men who lied to their wives deserved consequences. My parents started hearing things. Whispers at church. Questions from neighbors. The story Marcus had told began unraveling because Elena wasn't backing it up anymore. When someone asked her about what happened at the wedding, she told the truth. Said I'd fixed her veil. Said Marcus had misrepresented everything. Mom called me in January. 7 months after the wedding. "David," she said, and her voice shook. "We need to talk. All of us. Your father and I. We made a terrible mistake." The family meeting happened at a neutral restaurant. Marcus wasn't invited. Just my parents, Claire, and me. Dad apologized first, which shocked me. He wasn't a man who admitted fault easily. I should have asked your side, he said. Should have known my own son better than to believe you'd do something like that. We were so focused on Marcus's big day, Mom added. On making sure everything was perfect. We didn't think about how quickly we turned on you. Claire cried. I'm sorry. I was horrible to you. I just believed him because he's always been so convincing. They wanted me to come back. Sunday dinners, birthday parties, Christmas morning. Wanted to restore what had been broken. Part of me wanted that too. But another part, the part that had spent 7 months being invisible to them, wasn't ready. I appreciate this, I said carefully. But I need time. You didn't just believe Marcus. You cut me off completely. Didn't ask questions, didn't give me a chance to explain. That hurt more than what he did. Mom reached across the table for my hand. I let her take it. We'll wait, Dad said. However long it takes. Meanwhile, Marcus's life continued its downward spiral. He'd taken out new credit cards to cover the old ones. Borrowed from his in-laws before Elena separated from him. When Richard discovered that loan, he demanded full repayment within 90 days. Marcus couldn't pay. His salary barely covered his apartment rent after Elena took half the proceeds from selling the house they'd bought together. The BMW got repossessed in February. I heard about it from Claire, who still felt guilty enough to keep me informed. He's asking everyone for money, she told me over coffee. Calling all his old friends, distant relatives. People are starting to avoid him. Has he contacted you? Last week. Wanted to borrow $5,000. I said no. She looked down at her cup. He got angry. Said family was supposed to help family. I reminded him what he did to you. The irony wasn't lost on me. Marcus had spent years cultivating an image of success, and that image required constant maintenance. Required money he didn't have, borrowed from people who eventually stopped lending. The $43,000 I'd given him had been a bandage on a hemorrhaging wound. Now the wound was exposed, and everyone could see it. Elena filed for divorce in March. 1 year after Marcus had shown up at my apartment begging for money. The divorce papers cited irreconcilable differences, but everyone knew the real reasons. Financial dishonesty. Emotional manipulation. The gambling addiction Marcus still refused to acknowledge. He contested the divorce, which was predictable. Dragged everything out, made Elena's lawyers work for every concession. But his own lawyer eventually told him the truth, he had no leverage. No sympathetic facts. No credibility with the judge. The divorce finalized in June. Elena kept most of their remaining assets, which amounted to less than people thought. Marcus got his personal belongings and his debt. Through all of this, I stayed peripheral. Didn't gloat, didn't interfere. Let Marcus's own choices create his consequences. That's the thing about revenge stories, sometimes the best revenge is just stepping back and letting the truth breathe. But Marcus wasn't finished. Addicts rarely are. In July, he showed up at my apartment. 14 months after the wedding. I'd just gotten home from work, still in my dusty clothes from a construction site inspection. Found him sitting on my doorstep. He looked terrible. Lost weight, hair unkempt, clothes that didn't fit right anymore. The brother I remembered from childhood, the one who'd taught me to throw a football, was gone. This person was a stranger wearing Marcus's face. I need help, he said. No. David, please. I've got nowhere else. No. I unlocked my door. You burned that bridge. Poured gasoline on it and threw a match. I'm not your backup plan anymore. I'm your brother. That stopped me. I turned back, really looked at him. You were my brother, I said. But brothers don't do what you did. Brothers don't destroy each other's lives to hide their own mistakes. I was scared, he said, and for the first time, I heard something real in his voice. Not manipulation, but actual fear. Elena was the best thing that ever happened to me, and I was terrified she'd leave if she knew the truth. So I created a bigger lie. Made you the villain so she wouldn't look at me. Did it work? He laughed, bitter. Obviously not. Then you understand, I said. Actions have consequences. You chose yours. Now you get to live with them. I went inside. Closed the door. Listened to him sit on my doorstep for another 20 minutes before finally leaving. Heard his footsteps retreat down the stairs. Heard his car start and drive away. Felt something release in my chest. Not forgiveness, exactly. But closure. Update 2. People often ask me what happened to Marcus after that. Truth is, I'm not entirely sure. We haven't spoken in 3 years. What I know comes from Claire, who maintains minimal contact, and from Mom, who worries about him the way mothers always worry about their struggling children. He moved to Phoenix. Got a job in pharmaceutical sales, taking whatever territory nobody else wanted. Lives in a studio apartment, drives a used sedan. Goes to Gamblers Anonymous meetings 3 times a week, or so Claire says. Whether he's genuinely recovering or just going through motions, I can't say. Elena remarried last year. A kind man named Thomas who works as a physical therapist. They had a small wedding, just close friends and family. She invited me. I went, gave them a toaster, and left after dinner. No drama, no speeches, no hidden agendas. Just a normal wedding where everyone celebrated two people who'd found each other. She thanked me before I left. For telling me the truth, she said. It couldn't have been easy. You deserve to know who you married. I'm glad I know who you are too, she replied, and hugged me. The good man Marcus could never be. My relationship with my parents improved slowly. Took almost a year before Sunday dinners felt normal again. Before we could sit around the table without Marcus's absence hanging over everything. Dad and I rebuilt trust through small moments, helping him fix his deck, going to baseball games, talking about work projects instead of family drama. Mom struggled more. She's the peacemaker, always has been. Once everyone reconciled, everyone happy. Keeps suggesting I reach out to Marcus, give him another chance. I've stopped arguing with her about it. Just change the subject when it comes up. Claire and I grew closer through all of this. She felt tremendous guilt for how quickly she'd believed Marcus's lies, and that guilt motivated her to become more thoughtful, more questioning. She's in therapy now, working through family dynamics and her tendency to accept surface explanations. We meet for coffee every week, and she's become one of my closest friends. The construction company that fired me reached out 18 months ago. New leadership, they said. They'd reviewed my termination and found it unjustified. Offered me my old job back with back pay. I declined. Found I liked freelance consulting better. More control over my schedule, more variety in projects. Made more money too, once I built up my client base. Bought a house last spring, 3 bedrooms with a workshop in the garage. Put down 20% without anyone's help. Sometimes I drive past the church where Marcus's wedding happened. That reception hall still books events every weekend. Other families celebrating, other brothers serving as best men. I wonder if any of them are hiding secrets, building lies, preparing betrayals. Probably. That's the human condition. We're all capable of hurting the people closest to us. But we're also capable of recovery. Of building something new from ruins. Of choosing differently. I've had opportunities for revenge beyond what already happened. Marcus's new employer called me as a reference once. I could have destroyed him with one conversation, ensured he'd never work in sales again. Instead, I confirmed dates of employment for our parents' business where he'd worked summers during college, and said I couldn't speak to his current professional abilities. Elena's divorce lawyer wanted me to testify about the loan, about Marcus's gambling patterns. Would have strengthened her case, possibly gotten her more assets. I declined. Told her she had enough evidence without me. She won anyway. A local news outlet ran a story on gambling addiction 2 years ago, wanted interviews with families affected by it. They'd found out about Marcus somehow, wanted to talk to me about being the victim of a gambling addict's deception. I said no. Some stories don't need to be told to strangers. Here's the truth about revenge, it's mostly unsatisfying. The fantasy is that you'll hurt someone the way they hurt you, and that pain will balance the scales. But pain doesn't work like that. It's not transactional. You can destroy someone's life and still feel empty afterwards because the original hurt doesn't go away. What helped wasn't watching Marcus lose everything. What helped was rebuilding my own life. Finding work I enjoyed, friendships based on honesty, family relationships rooted in mutual respect instead of blind loyalty. Creating something real instead of staying focused on something destroyed. Marcus lives in Phoenix now, and I live in Oregon. 3 states between us. That distance feels appropriate. Not running away, not hiding. Just establishing healthy boundaries with someone who proved he couldn't respect them. Do I forgive him? Some days yes, some days no. Forgiveness isn't binary. It's a process, and I'm somewhere in the middle of it. I don't wish him harm, but I don't wish him back in my life either. Maybe that's enough. Last month, Mom mentioned that Marcus asked about me. Wanted to know how I was doing, if I was happy. She said he sounded genuine, not manipulative. Said he told her he understood why I wouldn't talk to him, but he wanted me to know he was sorry. I told Mom to tell him I heard his apology. Didn't say I accepted it, didn't say we'd reconcile. Just acknowledged that he'd said the words. Maybe someday that will be enough for a conversation. Maybe it won't. Either way, I'm okay with it. Because here's what I learned, you can't control how other people treat you. Can't prevent betrayal, can't stop people you love from choosing themselves over you. But you can control how you respond. Can choose whether to let bitterness consume you or whether to build something new. I chose to build. Found a good woman named Sarah who works as a civil engineer. We're taking things slow, no rush. She knows about Marcus, about the wedding, about everything. Told her on our 3rd date because I didn't want any secrets between us. She listened without judgment, then said, "Sounds like you handled it with a lot of grace." Maybe I did. Or maybe I just survived it and called that grace. Either way, I'm here. Living in a house I bought myself, doing work I'm proud of, surrounded by people who've proven themselves trustworthy. Dating someone who values honesty, who wouldn't weaponize my vulnerabilities. Marcus took $43,000 and my reputation. But he couldn't take my ability to start over. Couldn't destroy the person I fundamentally was. That remained, and I built everything else back from that foundation. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes surviving the betrayal, refusing to become bitter, choosing to trust people again despite the risk, sometimes that's the real victory. Not revenge, but renewal. I still think about that wedding sometimes. The moment Marcus grabbed my wrist, the look in his eyes. The speech that changed everything. Wonder if he'd planned it in advance or if it was spontaneous. If he'd lain awake the night before, rehearsing his accusations. If some part of him knew even then that his marriage was built on lies too fragile to survive scrutiny. Doesn't matter now. That was a different life, a different version of both of us. He made his choices. I made mine. We both live with the consequences. And honestly, I'm okay with how things turned out. Not happy about what happened, but satisfied with who I became in response to it. That's probably the best anyone can hope for when someone they love betrays them, not revenge, but the strength to become someone better. Marcus is in Phoenix. I'm here. The distance between us measures more than miles. It measures the gap between who we were and who we became after that wedding toast shattered our family. I'm at peace with that gap. Don't need to close it, don't need to bridge it. Some distances are exactly the right size. Life has a way of teaching you what matters. Not through gentle lessons, but through the brutal kind that strip away everything you thought you knew about the people you love. Marcus taught me that trust is earned, not given. That blood doesn't excuse betrayal. That sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones you'd have protected with your own life. But life also teaches you that you're stronger than you knew. That you can survive public humiliation and come out the other side with your integrity intact. That starting over isn't a failure, it's a choice, and sometimes it's the bravest choice available. I don't wake up angry anymore. Don't spend hours replaying that reception hall moment, imagining different responses. Moved past that. Found peace in the slow, unglamorous work of rebuilding. Of showing up for people who show up for me. Of being the kind of brother, son, and friend I wish Marcus had been. That's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything. Update 3. 4 years after the wedding, I ran into Marcus at a hardware store in Seattle. I was visiting for a client meeting, picking up some specialty tools I couldn't find back home. He was standing in the electrical aisle, studying wire gauges with the concentration of someone who had no idea what he was looking for. He saw me first. I watched the recognition cross his face, followed by something I couldn't quite identify. Not shame, exactly. More like resignation. "David," he said. "Marcus." We stood there in the fluorescent lighting, surrounded by shelves of screws and anchors and all the small components that hold structures together. An employee pushed a cart past us. The overhead speakers played something soft and forgettable. "I didn't know you were in Seattle," he finally said. "Just for work. Leaving tomorrow." He nodded, shifted his weight. The Marcus I remembered had always carried himself with confidence, even false confidence. This version seemed uncertain about how to stand, where to put his hands. "I'm doing better," he said, unprompted. 18 months sober from gambling. Got a sponsor, actually working the program this time instead of just showing up. "That's good." "Yeah." He set down the wire gauge package he'd been holding. "Look, I know you don't owe me anything. Don't owe me your time or attention or forgiveness. But I've been wanting to say something to you for years, and I keep chickening out. Would you have coffee with me? Just 20 minutes. If you hate every second of it, you can leave." Every instinct told me to decline. To make an excuse, walk away, maintain the distance I'd carefully constructed. But something in his face stopped me. Not manipulation, I'd learned to recognize that. This was different. Vulnerability, maybe. Or exhaustion. 20 minutes, I agreed. We drove separately to a coffee shop 3 blocks away. Sat across from each other in a corner booth while rain started pattering against the windows. Seattle weather, arriving right on schedule. Marcus ordered black coffee. I got the same. When the server left, he wrapped both hands around his mug like he needed the warmth. "I've spent 4 years in therapy," he began. "Real therapy, not just the sessions Elena made me go to before the divorce. And I've learned some things about myself. About why I did what I did." "I'm listening." "Dad always compared us. You remember that? Every accomplishment I had, he'd mention something you'd done. Every time I struggled, he'd point out how you'd handle it better. Made me feel like I was constantly losing a competition I didn't know I'd entered." I did remember. Dad had never meant it cruelly, but he definitely played us against each other. Used comparison as a motivational tool without considering the damage. I spent my whole life trying to be better than you, Marcus continued. Not because I didn't love you, but because I thought I had to be. Thought that was the only way to earn respect, to matter. The gambling started in college as a way to feel powerful. Like I could beat odds, outsmart systems. When I won, I felt like I'd finally proven something. And when you lost, I doubled down. Chased the feeling. Got deeper and deeper until I couldn't see a way out. He took a sip of coffee, grimaced at the heat. By the time I met Elena, I was drowning. She represented everything I wanted to be, stable, honest, put together. I thought marrying her would fix me. Like if I could just become the person she thought I was, I'd actually become that person. Doesn't work that way. No, he agreed. It doesn't. And when I borrowed that money from you, I was so desperate to keep the illusion alive. Desperate enough to do something unforgivable when I thought you might threaten it. I never threatened anything. I know. That's what makes it worse. His voice cracked slightly. You were just being you. Kind, helpful, there when I needed you. And I repaid that by destroying your reputation because I was terrified Elena would see through me if I didn't create a bigger distraction. The coffee shop hummed around us. A couple near the window laughed at something on their phone. Behind the counter, the espresso machine hissed and gurgled. I'm not telling you this to make excuses, Marcus said. There is no excuse for what I did. I'm telling you because I need you to know that I understand now. I understand what I took from you, and I understand why you don't want me in your life. My therapist says I need to make amends, but she also says that amends aren't about forcing people to forgive you. They're about acknowledging harm and changing behavior. Have you changed? I'm trying. He met my eyes directly. I don't gamble anymore. Haven't placed a bet in 18 months. I'm honest with people now, even when it costs me. Lost a sales opportunity last month because I admitted I didn't know something instead of bluffing. Cost me commission, but I slept better. That's progress. It feels like moving through mud. Everything's harder when you're honest. But it's real, you know? The relationships I have now, the friendships, they're based on who I actually am, not who I'm pretending to be. I studied him across the table. Saw gray threading through his hair at the temples. Saw lines around his eyes that hadn't been there at the wedding. Saw someone who'd hit bottom and started the slow climb back up. I appreciate you telling me this, I said carefully. And I'm glad you're doing better. But I need you to understand something too. What you did didn't just hurt me for a few months. It changed how I see the world. Made me question every relationship, every moment of trust. I spent 2 years in therapy myself, working through betrayal trauma. I'm sorry, he whispered. I know you are. But sorry doesn't erase what happened. Doesn't give me back the job I lost, the apartment I had to leave, the relationships that never recovered. Doesn't erase standing in that reception hall while 200 people looked at me like I was trash. Marcus's hands tightened around his mug. What can I do? Nothing. There's nothing to do except keep working on yourself. Not for me, not to earn forgiveness, but because it's the right way to live. I finished my coffee. I don't hate you anymore. Took a long time to get here, but I don't. I also don't trust you, and I don't want you back in my life. Maybe that will change someday. Maybe it won't. That's fair. We sat in silence for a moment. The rain intensified outside, drumming against the windows with steady rhythm. How's Elena? Marcus asked quietly. Happy. Married to a good man. They're expecting their first child in November. Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or regret. Tell her congratulations if you talk to her. I will. And you? He asked. Are you happy? The question surprised me. Yeah, I said, and realized I meant it. I am. Got engaged last month, actually. Sarah and I are planning a small wedding next spring. That's great, David. Really? He smiled, and it looked genuine. I'm glad one of us figured it out. We left the coffee shop together, stood under the awning while rain poured down around us. Marcus extended his hand. I hesitated, then shook it. Take care of yourself, I said. You too. He walked to his car, shoulders hunched against the weather. I watched him drive away, feeling something loosen in my chest. Not forgiveness, not exactly. But maybe the beginning of letting go. The encounter with Marcus stayed with me for weeks. Sarah noticed my distraction, asked about it one evening while we were cooking dinner together in our kitchen. I saw Marcus, I told her, chopping vegetables for stir-fry. In Seattle. We talked. She stopped stirring the pan. How was that? Strange. He's different. Smaller somehow. Like he's been worn down by consequences. Do you believe he's changed? I thought about it. I believe he's trying to change. Whether he succeeds long term, I don't know. Addiction is complicated. So is personality transformation. Sarah moved behind me, wrapped her arms around my waist. Do you want him at our wedding? No, I said immediately, then reconsidered. Maybe. I don't know. Part of me feels like excluding him is letting him keep power over me. Like I'm still organizing my life around avoiding him. Or maybe you're just protecting your boundaries. Those are different things. That's why I loved her. Sarah had this way of cutting through confusion, finding the core truth in complicated situations. She'd been through her own family trauma, a father who'd abandoned them when she was 12, and had done the hard work of healing. Recognized the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation, between moving on and pretending things were fine. What would you do? I asked. It's not my decision. But if you're asking my opinion, I'd say invite your family, celebrate with people who've proven they love you, and let Marcus continue his recovery without making it part of your special day. You don't owe him that. She was right. The wedding should be about Sarah and me, about the life we were building. Not about Marcus's redemption arc or family reconciliation. Those were separate issues. We sent invitations in January. My parents, Claire, Sarah's mom and sister, close friends, Elena and Thomas. Kept the guest list small, intimate. Sent nothing to Phoenix. Mom called the day after receiving her invitation. Sweetheart, are you sure about not inviting Marcus? He's your brother. I'm sure, Mom. But it's been 4 years. He's really trying. Goes to meetings, sees a therapist. Your father and I have noticed such a change in him. I'm glad he's changing. I genuinely am. But my wedding isn't the place for us to rebuild our relationship. Maybe someday we'll get there. Just not yet. She sighed. I understand. I wish things were different, but I understand. Dad's response surprised me. He sent a text that evening, your wedding, your choice. Marcus needs to earn his way back, not be handed it. Proud of you for knowing the difference. Coming from a man who'd spent my childhood teaching us that family loyalty trumped everything, that message meant more than he probably knew. The wedding happened on a Saturday in April. Small ceremony in a garden, 30 guests total. Sarah wore a simple dress she'd found at a vintage shop, and I wore the suit I'd bought for Marcus's wedding, reclaimed and repurposed for something better. When I said my vows, I looked at Sarah and saw someone who knew all my broken pieces, who'd seen how Marcus's betrayal had damaged me, and chose to love me anyway. Who'd been patient through my trust issues, my occasional paranoia, the moments when past trauma surfaced unexpectedly. I promised to be honest with you, I said, improvising beyond the words we'd written. Even when honesty is hard. Especially then. I promised to trust you with my vulnerabilities and to honor yours. And I promised to build something real with you, something that can't be shaken by lies or betrayals. She cried. So did I. So did most of our guests, actually. At the reception, Elena approached me during dinner. She was 7 months pregnant now, glowing with that particular radiance expecting mothers have. This is beautiful, she said, gesturing around the small venue. Everything about it feels authentic. Like you and Sarah. Thanks. How are you feeling? Exhausted and excited. Thomas is convinced it's a boy. I think it's a girl. We'll find out in 2 months. She paused. I heard you saw Marcus. Coffee in Seattle. He told you? He wrote me a letter. Apologizing, explaining his recovery process. Asked if we could talk sometime. I haven't responded yet. Are you going to? Elena considered this. Maybe eventually. Not because I owe him anything, but because I think closure might help me. I've built a good life with Thomas, but there's still this unresolved piece with Marcus. This question of whether his apology is genuine or just another manipulation. He seemed genuine to me, I admitted. But I'm still not ready to trust that. Neither am I. She smiled. Maybe we're both too smart to fall for it again, or maybe we're too damaged to recognize real change. Hard to say. Thomas joined us then, and the conversation shifted to baby names and nursery colors. Normal, happy topics. The kind of conversation you have at weddings, surrounded by people you love, celebrating beginnings instead of mourning endings. That night, after the reception ended and Sarah and I returned to our hotel room, I felt something settle in my chest. A sense of completion that had nothing to do with Marcus or revenge or reconciliation. This was about building something new, something mine, something that stood independent of my brother's choices. Sarah fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the day. I stayed awake a while longer, thinking about the journey from that reception hall 4 years ago to this hotel room now. About the person I'd become through surviving betrayal. About the life I'd built from ruins. Marcus was in Phoenix, trying to change. Elena was in Portland, building a family with someone trustworthy. My parents were learning to respect boundaries instead of demanding blind loyalty. Claire had become thoughtful and questioning instead of automatically accepting surface explanations. And I was here. Married to a woman who saw me clearly and loved what she saw. Living in a house I'd bought through my own work. Surrounded by people who'd proven their trustworthiness through years of consistent behavior. That felt like victory. Not the dramatic kind where villains get punished and heroes triumph. The quiet kind where you survive something terrible and find your way back to happiness anyway. 6 months after our wedding, Claire called with unexpected news. Marcus was moving back to Oregon. Not to our city, but to Bend, 3 hours away. He'd gotten a job with a medical supply company, managing their Central Oregon territory. I thought you should know, Claire said. In case you run into him. Bend's pretty far. Doubt our paths will cross much. He's also engaged. To someone he met in Gamblers Anonymous. Her name is Rachel. They've been dating for 8 months. That caught me off guard. Fast. I thought so too. But Mom met her last month, said she seems grounded. She's a teacher, has her own recovery story. Apparently, they're taking things seriously, joint therapy sessions, financial transparency, the whole thing. Good for him. Are you okay with this? Him being closer? I thought about it. Yeah, actually. I am. He's allowed to rebuild his life. Doesn't affect mine unless I let it. But proximity has a way of creating situations. 2 months later, Dad had a heart attack. Mild one, thankfully. He was in the hospital for 3 days, and we all converged on the cardiac unit. Me, Sarah, Mom, Claire, and eventually, Marcus. He arrived on the second day, walked into the waiting room where we'd all been camping. Saw me, stopped. Is it okay that I'm here? He asked. Before I could answer, Mom stood up. You're his son. Of course it's okay. We spent 18 hours together in that waiting room. Drinking terrible coffee, eating vending machine snacks, waiting for updates from nurses and doctors. The proximity forced interaction. Not deep conversation, but the small exchanges that happen when people share crisis space. Marcus asked how my business was doing. I asked about Bend, about his new job. He showed me pictures of Rachel on his phone, a woman with kind eyes and an easy smile. I showed him photos from my wedding. We talked about Dad's stubbornness, about his refusal to follow his diet, about how Mom had been the one to insist they call 911 despite Dad's protests. Normal family conversation. Strange and uncomfortable at first, but gradually becoming less so. On the third day, when doctors confirmed Dad would recover fully with lifestyle changes, we all went to the cafeteria together. Sat around a table, exhausted and relieved. Marcus was quiet, but present. Didn't try to dominate conversation or make everything about him. When we left the hospital that evening, Marcus walked me to my car. Thank you, he said. For what? For not making this harder than it had to be. You could have made everyone choose sides, created drama. You didn't. Dad having a heart attack wasn't about you and me. I know. But still. Thank you. He hesitated. Rachel and I are getting married in December. Small ceremony, just immediate family. I'm not expecting you to come, but I wanted you to know you're invited. Both of you. I leaned against my car. I'll think about it. That's more than I deserve. He walked away before I could respond. I watched him go, feeling that strange mixture of emotions I'd come to associate with Marcus. Residual anger mixed with cautious hope. Wariness alongside reluctant pride that he was still trying. Sarah and I discussed it that night. Lying in bed, both of us processing the unexpected family crisis and its implications. Do you want to go to his wedding? She asked. Part of me does. Part of me thinks it's too soon, that I'd be forcing something that isn't ready yet. What does your gut say? That showing up would be an act of grace. Not forgiveness, exactly. But acknowledgement that he's working to become someone different. Then maybe that's your answer. We RSVP'd yes in November. 1 month before Marcus's wedding, 4.5 years after mine. Claire cried when I told her, said it meant the world to Mom and Dad. Said Marcus had quietly asked about me after we'd all left the hospital, wondered if there was any possibility of repair. I told him the truth, Claire said. That you're not holding grudges, but you're also not rushing forgiveness. That real reconciliation takes time and consistent behavior. What did he say? That he understood. That he'd wait as long as necessary. The wedding took place at a small venue in Bend, with 20 guests. Rachel's family, our family, a few close friends from their recovery community. Simple decorations, handwritten vows, an intimacy that felt earned rather than performed. I watched Marcus promise to be honest, to stay accountable, to choose recovery every day. Watched him cry when Rachel said she loved him not despite his past but including it, because his willingness to change had shown her who he really was. Watched, and felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not yet. But maybe the willingness to leave room for it eventually. At the reception, Marcus approached me during dinner. Rachel stood beside him, her hand in his. David, I want you to meet Rachel properly. We shook hands. She had a firm grip, direct eye contact. Marcus has told me everything, she said. About the gambling, the lies, what he did to you. I appreciate you being here anyway. He's family, I said simply. That's complicated, but it's true. It is complicated, she agreed. But I think complication is better than pretense. We're building something real, and that means acknowledging all the messy history that brought us here. I liked her immediately. Saw why Marcus had been drawn to someone this grounded, this unwilling to accept easy answers or surface performances. Marcus cleared his throat. I know I've said this before, but I need to say it again. I'm sorry, David. For everything. For the wedding toast, for taking your money, for making you the villain in a story where I was the actual problem. You deserved better from me. Yeah, I agreed. I did. I'm trying to be someone who deserves you as a brother now. I know I'm not there yet. Maybe I'll never get all the way there. But I'm trying. Sarah appeared beside me then, slipped her hand into mine. We know you are, she said gently. That's why we're here. The evening continued. No dramatic reconciliation scene, no tearful embrace. Just a family gathering where people who'd hurt each other were learning to coexist again. Learning that healing happens slowly, in small increments, through choices made consistently over time. Dad pulled me aside before we left. He looked older than he had before the heart attack, more fragile. The experience had changed something in him. I'm proud of you, he said. For coming tonight. For being the bigger person. I'm not being the bigger person, Dad. I'm just trying to figure out how to have a brother again. That's what being the bigger person means. It means trying when you'd be justified in walking away. We hugged, and I felt his ribs through his shirt. Felt how close we'd come to losing him, how that proximity to death had rearranged everyone's priorities. I'm sorry I compared you boys so much when you were young, he continued. Your mother and I have been talking about it. About how we pitted you against each other without meaning to. How we created competition where there should have been solidarity. You were doing your best. Our best created damage. I'm trying to do better now. We both are. As Sarah and I drove home that night, through darkness and scattered snow flurries, I felt lighter somehow. Like I'd been carrying weight I didn't know was there until it started lifting. That went well, Sarah observed. Better than expected. Do you think you'll be able to forgive him eventually? Honestly? I think I already have, at least partially. Not in a way where everything's forgotten or where I trust him completely. But in a way where I can see him as a person who made terrible mistakes and is genuinely trying to change. That's a kind of forgiveness, isn't it? The most realistic kind, she agreed. Life has a way of moving forward whether you're ready or not. Healing happens in the margins, during ordinary moments when you're focused on something else entirely. You don't wake up one day and suddenly trust again. You take small risks, test boundaries, see what holds. Marcus and I talk occasionally now. Not often, but regularly. Every few months, he'll call to check in. Tell me about work, about Rachel, about the life they're building in Bend. Ask about my business, about Sarah's engineering projects, about whether we're thinking about kids yet. The conversations are careful at first, both of us navigating what's safe to say. But gradually they've become more natural. More like brothers, less like strangers pretending civility. He hasn't asked me for money. Hasn't asked me for anything, actually, except the chance to prove he's different. That's progress. That's trust being rebuilt one small moment at a time. Sarah and I had our first child last October. A daughter named Maya. When she was born, Marcus sent flowers to the hospital. Included a card that said, "Congratulations on your beautiful family. May she inherit her father's integrity." I cried reading that card. Not because it erased anything, but because it acknowledged everything. Acknowledged what he'd taken, what he'd learned, what he hoped to become. Mom asked if Marcus could visit, meet Maya. I said yes. He drove down with Rachel, stayed for 2 hours, held his niece with the gentleness of someone who knows how fragile trust is. Who understands that this invitation was a gift, not a given. She's perfect, he said quietly, looking down at Maya's sleeping face. You're going to be an amazing father. I'm going to try. You already are. He handed Maya back carefully. Can I ask you something? Anything. How did you do it? How did you come back from what I did and build all this? Marriage, business, family. I destroyed you, and somehow you're thriving. I thought about the question. About the nights I'd spent angry, the therapy sessions, the slow work of trusting people again. I didn't come back alone, I said finally. Had help. Sarah, mostly. But also, I made a choice not to let your betrayal define me. Refused to become bitter or closed off. That was probably the hardest thing I've ever done, staying open to people after you proved how much damage closeness could cause. I'm grateful you did. Me too. He left that afternoon, and I haven't seen him since. But we've talked on the phone, exchanged photos. Built something small but real. Not the brotherhood we had before, that's gone, and pretending otherwise would be dishonest. But maybe the beginning of a different relationship. One built on reality instead of obligation, on choice instead of blood. That feels like enough. When people ask me about Marcus now, I tell them the truth. He's my brother, and our relationship is complicated. We're not close, probably never will be in the way siblings ideally are. But we've found a way to exist in each other's lives without causing harm. Found a way to acknowledge the past without being trapped by it. Some betrayals are too large to fully overcome. The scar tissue remains, thick and visible, a permanent reminder of the wound. But scar tissue is still tissue. Still part of you. Still functional, even if it doesn't look or feel the same as what was there before. I look at Maya sometimes, this tiny person Sarah and I created, and wonder what kind of world we're bringing her into. What mistakes we'll make as parents, what damage we'll inadvertently cause despite our best intentions. Wonder if she'll someday need to forgive us for things we can't yet imagine doing wrong. That's the human condition, isn't it? We hurt each other. We try to do better. We fail, succeed, fail again. The question isn't whether we'll cause pain, we will. The question is whether we'll have the courage to acknowledge it, to change, to let ourselves be transformed by our mistakes rather than defined by them. Marcus is trying. That's all anyone can do. Try, fail, try again. Keep showing up, keep choosing honesty, keep working toward being someone you're not ashamed to see in the mirror. And me? I'm trying too. Trying to let go of old anger, to make room for complicated forgiveness, to be the kind of person Maya can look up to. The kind of husband Sarah deserves. The kind of son who can help his aging parents navigate their own regrets and reconciliations. None of it is perfect. All of it is real. That's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything.